Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pam Wycliffe, and we are doing lunch with the league today. It is October the 10th. So we, as a league, never support or oppose a political party or candidate. We're nonpartisan, we're a political organization, and we encourage informed and active participation in government. We present unbiased information about elections, the voting process and issues. And if we studied something, we often use our position to advocate for or against particular policies for the public interest. Therefore, because of that, the comments and opinions of folks who speak today may or may not be those of the league. We'll be here from now until 1 o'clock. And the format, as we've just talked about, is Amanda will speak for about a half hour or until she's finished. And then we'll have a Q&A and send in your questions. Put them please in the chat. And then I'll read them to her. Remain muted during the talk. And for more information about the league, just a minute, I'm going to let somebody in. And for more, if you want more information about the League of Women Voters and their positions, you can go to www.lwvsouthbend.org. And not only can you find out about us here locally, but you can also find a link to the Indiana League of Voters and also to the National League of Voters and what their stance is on a lot of issues and where they stand. I don't have any league news. I don't know if anybody else does because I didn't have anyone tell me any news. Does anybody have something about the league they think we need to, some activity that we need to highlight?
I do.
Okay.
This was put out by Elizabeth Benyon back quite a few years ago. It's a little book about the Constitution. It's literally the Constitution. And I think it would be wonderful if the league either got these printed for free or maybe they did it as a fundraiser, like charge $5 for this little book. But this wonderful little Constitution book is really nice. And somehow I feel like a lot of people need to reread it right now.
You're right.
So this is my league plea is that you guys maybe publish this. Just an idea.
I think that's a good idea. I remember I have one of those. I remember getting it also. And Don he keeps it right there by his chair. And I think he reads it periodically as issues come up.
Well, and we might want to print them before they're banned. No.
That's true. Okay.
Thank you.
That's a good idea, Sue. It is. And I wrote it down. Okay. If there are no other questions, I am going to introduce our speaker today, who is Amanda Buchholz. Yeah.
Buchholz.
There she is. Yes. And she is, I'm sorry, Amanda. I've never called her by her last name. I've always just called her Amanda. She is the recruiter and trainer of CASA of St. Joe County. And CASA is the court-appointed special advocates program. She was born and raised in South Bend, a graduate of Clay High School and Indiana University South Bend. She's had extensive experience working with children and vulnerable populations. She spent 6.5 years teaching children at a local learning center, then transitioned to working with adults with special needs. In her 7 years working, where am I? With adults and everybody's 7 years working, I'm sorry. She held roles for the lead instructor for Hannah and Friends Day program to caseworker with the Logan Protective Services. In 2021, she joined CASA as the trainer and recruiter, and she loves getting to know the various community members she has the pleasure of training to be CASA volunteers. In 2025, she joined Michiana Down Syndrome Board, and she has a passion for helping the most vulnerable populations in Michiana, giving her a true purpose in this world. And she grabbed me. I've been a CASA for 10 years, so I know about the program. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Amanda. It is all yours, Amanda.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks everybody for coming to learn a little bit more about CASA. I think one of my goals as the recruiter trainer now is to make sure everyone in St. Joe County knows what CASA is and knows that we are not La Casa de Amistad, which a lot of people know in our area. So that's kind of my big joke when we start, because La Casa is really out there. But we are very different programs. We do different things. So I want to tell you a little bit about the CASA program, the Court Appointed Special Advocates Program of St. Joe County, and how we help children in the foster care system go from the child you see on the left side of your screen, confused, scared, unsure, feeling alone, to the child you see on the right-hand side. Once you add that advocate, you add that community member that's there to be there for the child and be their voice. They become comfortable, they feel heard and supported. So here we go. So just a little overview. As Pam mentioned, CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. We're a volunteer-based program. Judges promote CASA volunteers to advocate for the safety and well-being of children who've been affected due to abuse or neglect by their primary caregiver or caregivers. So these essentially are all Department of Child Services, DCS, CPS, whatever you call it, where you can't, grew up, cases. So the Department of Child Services is involved. There's some sort of abuse or neglect by a caregiver in all of these cases. We say the foster care system broadly. When I say foster care, it doesn't mean every single child I'm talking about is in a foster home. DCS has done a push recently to, and it's a good push, to keep kids with families when possible. So if they can be with grandparents, aunt or uncle, or even a kinship placement with a teacher or a pastor or someone like that, family friend, that's the best case for those kids to be in versus foster care where it's a stranger. So it's still the foster care system. They're not in home with their families without, intervention of the state. So I just want to clarify, when I say foster care, it could be a plethora of things for where these kids are. But our volunteers, because we're a volunteer-based organization, are everyday citizens just like you guys. We train our volunteers to learn how to advocate for these kids, and every volunteer has a paid staff supervisor who's with them every step of their case. So actually this morning we swore in 6 volunteers. We just had our fall class. So all of those volunteers have accepted cases. They got to meet with their supervisors this morning, and they're going to kind of jump into learning about what's going on in these cases so that, they can start meeting people and advocate for the kids that they just agreed to help. So our volunteers ultimately stand up for these kids and change their lives by advocating for their best interests, primarily through the court system, because we do go to court. I think a lot of people know about foster care, but they don't realize that there are court cases that go along with kids and who are in foster care, because there are decisions being made about where they live, how much they see their parents, under what level of supervision they see their parents, if they need to be moved or go to different schools, or if there's any issues with services that they need. All of these things, there are decisions, court decisions that are made by a judge or magistrate, and that kind of dictates what happens in these cases. So I'll talk a little bit about how life of a case works. But we also advocate for these kids in their daily lives. Something as simple as, I had a CASA kid who we went to lunch and we were chit-chatting, and I was like, it was fall. And I was like, what's your favorite season? We were talking about the weather. And she was like, it's fall because it's my birthday and Halloween's my favorite holiday. And I was like, that's awesome. What were you for Halloween last year? And she said, last year I didn't want to go trick-or-treating because my parents gave me a garbage bag, and that's what I had to wear trick-or-treating. And for her favorite holiday and how much that hurt her, I wanted to make sure that she was in foster care, that her foster parents knew this is her favorite holiday, and can we make sure that she has a good Halloween, because last year she was embarrassed and didn't want to go trick-or-treating because she was wearing a garbage bag. So like those little things end up mattering, as well as, you know, the big things we advocate for. So just a brief history of CASA. The concept of CASA was created by a juvenile court judge in Seattle in 1977, David Sokup. He was concerned because he saw he was making drastic decisions about kids' lives, but he felt like they were being re-victimized. They were coming back into his courtroom because DCS was overworked, underpaid. There weren't enough people to kind of keep their eyes on the situation. He didn't feel like he was getting all of the information and having to make these drastic decisions about a child's life. He felt like there needed to be someone else looking out specifically just for the children. So he came up with the idea of volunteers, you know, citizens in his area, and he helped train them and come up with what we now know as the CASA model. Today, 939 state CASA and guardian ad litem organizations and local programs are operated in 49 states. And to confuse you, you might hear guardian ad litem. Depending on the county or the state, guardian ad litems could be volunteers. So like in Florida, it's very common. Like I've had people call me and say, I was a guardian ad litem in Florida. I'm in Indiana. Can I be a CASA now? So they were volunteers there. But in St. Joe County, a guardian ad litem is a paid attorney and a CASA is a volunteer. So other places in Indiana, you might hear guardian ad litem and they're a volunteer, but I can tell you St. Joe County, CASA is the volunteer, guardian ad litem is a paid attorney. So, sorry, I gotta move you guys on my screen so I can see. All right, so the mission of CASA, obviously, is we recruit, screen, and train volunteers to be child advocates to work in this court system in collaboration with other key agencies, legal counsel, community resources. Our volunteers make recommendations regarding appropriate protective and rehabilitative services necessary to ensure a safe and permanent home for every child adjudicated CHINs. The most important thing for CASAs is, one, the child's safety. Two, we want to make sure they find a permanent home as soon as possible. And three, we want to make sure that home is somewhere they can thrive, whether it's being returned, guardianship with a grandparent, adoption by someone else, whatever it is, we want to make sure the child's going to thrive and that the family's not going to come back. You know, if we reunify, we don't want them to come back. We want to make sure that they have all of the tools necessary to build the skills to not end up back in the system, right? And so, you know, these kids are our most vulnerable in our community, and our CASAs give them a voice, which is very important. So these are just some roles. Pam, you're in this. I use this presentation, and I guess I never told you you're in it. But these are different roles that you might hear about. These are the three most important roles or most common roles we talk about. Is we have CASA volunteers, who are our community members. They're vetted, trained. They investigate, facilitate, advocate, monitor what's going on in the case. And every volunteer has a supervisor. And so Pam's in a picture with her supervisor, Tara, there, going through our coat closet and clothes closet. So our supervisor of volunteers, they're there to guide, support, ensure continuous care. So what's really cool about CASA is the supervisor should know everything that's going on in the case, so that if the volunteer has an emergency, they can pick up, go to court if there's an emergency, fill in wherever is needed, because we want continuous care for these kids. And then we also have staff advocates, because we don't have enough volunteers in St. Joe County and we have so many kids that we see. We have pretty much paid staff who can advocate for up to 50 kids, but that's not ideal. We don't want to turn into DCS where we have people with too many cases and things go, you know, slip through the cracks. So that's the beauty of having a volunteer, where you have one case, or if you're retired, maybe you have a couple of cases, but you can put your time and energy into that case so nothing gets missed. So the goal is to have no staff advocates, only volunteers and volunteer supervisors, so that each case gets the time and attention it deserves. So why are CASAs needed? What's the purpose here? So on the left-hand side, you see what our waitlist cases look like, which we have over 100 waitlist cases right now. So the cases are still happening, they're being heard. So essentially what happens with these cases is what brought the family in? Was it substance abuse? Was it domestic violence, physical abuse, whatever it is? DCS will look at the information and decide if it's more likely than not that this happened. And if so, they're going to err on the side of caution. This is civil court. This is not criminal court. There may be a criminal aspect if the prosecutor wants to do that, if they have enough evidence, but this is more erring on the side of believing children and making sure families are safe. So essentially what happens is if they were brought in maybe for domestic violence, DCS is going to come up with a list of services that they believe the family needs to complete in order to remediate the reason why they were involved. So maybe the perpetrator of domestic violence needs to go through domestic violence classes to learn how to deal with maybe their anger issues and how to deal with problems, and maybe some parenting classes. And the survivor would need to go through domestic violence survivor classes on how to recognize domestic violence, how to get out of it, those kinds of things. And probably parenting classes as well. And DCS might ask for psychological evaluations, all sorts of stuff. But essentially there's this plan that says like the parents need to complete all of these things and kind of show that they've learned from it, right? You know, and if it's a situation where it's unsafe for the children to be with the parent and they've been removed and they're somewhere else, there's visitation time that's usually set up, and it's usually supervised by someone in a facility, so that the parents aren't left alone with the children. And so all of these things are being ordered by the court. And without a CASA, the only people in the courtroom are DCS and their attorney and the parents and their attorneys. And there are times, if you can imagine, where those two sides don't agree and they're giving all of this information to the magistrate or judge, and that magistrate or judge has two sides of one story and now has to make a decision. And that can be hard when you have two people against each other. So having a CASA and the CASA supervisor, like you see on the right-hand side, adds that extra layer of people looking into what's going on, talking to all the parties and providers, everyone involved. And we're specifically looking out for the kids. So while DCS is involved, and DCS, the state of Indiana, pays for all of these services, right? Our tax dollars pay for these services. We can check and say, you know, we can talk to the child's teacher and say, how are they doing in school? If they're behind in school, we can ask that DCS pay for a tutor while this case is open. We can find those gaps in that child's care while everyone's involved and try to make sure that those gaps are filled. In my opinion, we're the idea guy, we're the checks and balances. We don't provide services. We do research, we find the gaps, and we come up with ideas to help fill them. And we ask other people, can you put in this referral? Can you pay for this? Can we try this? We come up with the ideas and try to make sure that, you know, whatever reason for involvement, hopefully best case scenario is parents do what they're supposed to. They can be reunited with their kids. They're learning from it, and that the kids can be caught up, you know, medically, physically, whatever. And, you know, they have supports where they can go on and never come back. And that's kind of the goal of having a CASA on a case is, you know, that they don't end up back in the system, that they can thrive wherever they end up.
Mm-hmm.
These are just some roles and responsibilities. We research, we facilitate, we advocate, and we monitor. A lot of what we do is just talking to people. It's a lot of relationships. It's talking to the child's therapist. How are they doing? Talking to their teacher. How are they doing? We get reports on anything, any service DCS pays for. We get those reports. So if parents are ordered to do domestic violence classes or counseling or whatever, we get to read through those reports. And what I think is really interesting is that service providers don't have the whole picture, but CASA does. So you might have a counselor where, you know, the parent is telling them one thing, and then they go to a different service provider and tell them something else. And those service providers don't talk to each other. And so they don't know, you know, like the parent is telling you what they think you want to hear, and then telling this person what they think they want to hear, and all these different things. And so it's important that there's one person that has all of the facts. And that's really important to ensure that nothing's getting missed and that we're not getting the wool pulled over our eyes, because sometimes you have parents who are very good at they're very charismatic and they can convince a lot of people a lot of things, and we base all of our recommendations on facts. So it's not off feelings, it's a fact. I need something to back up what I'm recommending. It's not that I don't feel great about this, it's that I read this report and someone wrote something that I think is concerning, or someone said something I think is concerning. I saw something I think is concerning. And so there's always something tangible to back up what I'm asking for. So this is just a little, I like infographics if you can't tell. This is kind of like what a CASA does, the life of a store or the life of a case. So it starts with a child becoming involved with the foster care system. A judge appoints the CASA program, and we match. What's really cool is we match our volunteers with a case. So the volunteers that I just swore in, I have a little slip of paper and I ask them, how far are you willing to travel? Because our volunteers have to visit their kids at least once a month. So if you have a child who has a family member in Southern Indiana who's going to take them and be their placement, we need to know, like, how far are you willing to drive every single month? And so what's nice is we have staff members who have cases and we get county cars. So a lot of times staff members take those cases. But there are times where, you know, kids get moved and we just want to make sure that the volunteer can visit them, right? We also ask if there are any topics that are sensitive. So if we have we have a lot of people who come in who want to be volunteers who have a past, who have had traumatic things happen to them. And then in the interview, I ask them, you know, is there anything that you'd rather not have a case with this in it? Sexual abuse is a big one where a lot of people are like, please don't give me that. That's perfectly fine. I will make sure that we find a case for you that doesn't have that. We have the CASA and the volunteer and the child get to meet each other and get to know each other, which is amazing. It can take some time sometimes because a lot of these kids feel like they can't trust adults because that's what they've learned is the parents in their lives and other people have always let them down. And so the older they get, the more you can see like they might not trust you when you come in to say, I'm here, you know, to get to know you and make sure that your thoughts and your feelings are taken into account. And, you know, I want what's best for you. They might not trust you right away. We've had, specifically, I know of a volunteer who had a child in a residential facility and he drove hours, maybe 2 hours once a month to go visit this child. And the child wouldn't talk to him for the first like 6 months. But after that first 6 months, all of a sudden the child was like, well, he's showing up every single month. He must really care. And then they started talking and then they developed an amazing relationship. It just took the 6 months of him going every single time he said he was going to be there and being there and showing up and trying for the child to realize, okay, this person does care about my future and what's going on with me. The CASA is going to, like I mentioned, communicate with everyone involved in the case. You know, teachers, doctors, therapists, all sorts of service providers. We work very closely with DCS. We are not DCS. We are not affiliated with them. A lot of times we agree with them, but there are times we definitely don't. And so we still work professionally with DCS when we don't agree with them. We let them know, I don't agree with you because of X, Y, and Z with our facts. And they still work professionally with us as long as, you know, we give them that courtesy and they give us that courtesy, which, you know, generally we work very well together. So the CASA provides advocacy for the child's best interest in court. And as Pam noted in the chat, the court takes what CASA says very seriously. They call us the eyes and the ears of the court because judges and magistrates cannot go out and do their own research. I don't know if people know that, but if they have a question in court, they have to ask it in court. They can't go after a hearing and go research stuff. They're not allowed to. They don't get the reports we get. So we get reports on how the child is doing in counseling or how the parents are doing in their services. The magistrates and judges don't get those reports. They only get the information we give them. So it's very important that we're reading them, which DCS also reads those. But DCS looks at this case in a different lens. They have a different place. You know, so they're working for both the kids and the parents, and we're just there for the kids. So it's important that there's someone there who's just looking out for the kids. And when you have one case, sometimes you catch things because you can spend time reading and rereading. You might catch a thing or two that maybe DCS missed, because when you have someone who has a caseload of 20 plus kids, and one of them, something happened in their placement and they have to be moved tonight, but you have a hearing tomorrow and you were going to prep for your hearing tonight, but now you're driving across the state of Indiana to move a kid. That's why it's important to have CASA, because DCS has so much they have to deal with, that it's important to have that volunteer I'm solely focused on this one case, so that if they have another case that's blowing up, we can still focus on this and make sure nothing gets missed. Obviously, in the end, is for the child to either be returned home, placed into a safe permanent home with guardianship or adoption, and the case is closed. DCS is out of the picture, CASA is out of the picture. That is the end goal of every case. And always return home is the preference if it's safe, but that's the key, is if it's safe. So 2/3 of our cases end in reunification. In 2024, out of like 600 some cases, like 400 some ended in reunification. So that is generally what will happen, but every once in a while there's times where it's just not safe for those kids to go home, and that's why it's so important for CASA to be involved, to make sure that these kids aren't getting sent back to a dangerous place. Here's just some statistics. I have national, state, and then I have county. Nationally, in 2024, nearly 80,000 CASA and GAL volunteers served more than 200,000 kids in the US. Sadly, there are more than 370,000 foster kids in care on any given day in the US. For the state of Indiana, in 2024, 87 of our 92 counties were served by a CASA or GAL program, which is awesome. Indiana actually is one of the biggest networks of CASA GAL programs by state, which is super cool. 2,812 active volunteers advocated for over 19,000 kids just in Indiana last year, and over 550 new volunteers were trained statewide. So that's a lot. And my today statistics are like 2 weeks old, so it might be it's a little bit different. I know our wait list is over 100 kids, but for St. Joseph County last year, we had 117 active volunteers. We advocated for 728 kids just in St. Joe County last year. That's not including the 133 that were on the wait list at the end of the year. So if we could serve all kids, it would be over 800 kids every single year, pushing 900 just in St. Joe County. And today we have over 100 active volunteers and 15 staff. We're advocating for just over 450 kids, 463-ish. And I know our wait list has gone up. We're over 100 kids on the wait list right now. As of, I updated this PowerPoint 2 weeks ago, and we're already up over 100 kids. So, it's a constant need. So as soon as we've eliminated the wait list twice in our history here in CASA in St. Joseph County, but it only lasts a day or two, because every day or every couple of days there's a new case coming in, sometimes multiple cases in a day. So it's a constant need of volunteers, and our goal is to have a wait list of volunteers, not kids, where volunteers get a break and then we can call and say, hey, we finally have a case for you. In a perfect world, CASA wouldn't exist, because there wouldn't be child abuse and neglect, right? But we don't live in that perfect world. And so we're very lucky that our volunteers are here to help these kids in St. Joe County. So some benefits to the community: kids with CASAs are ordered by the court to receive more services than a typical child who's stuck in the system without a CASA, because we're talking to people, we're talking to doctors, we're talking to teachers, we're talking to all these people involved in the child's life. And if we see a gap, we're going to ask that it be filled. And cases like those 100 cases that don't have a CASA, if DCS doesn't have the time because they have other cases blowing up to go reach out to a teacher for a couple of months, and then they reach out and it's the end of the school year and the child's, really far behind and might have to retake that grade level, it's difficult. So it's important that there's someone extra, that extra checks and balances, so that nothing gets, lost in the shuffle. Kids who have CASA spend substantially less time in long-term foster care by approximately 2 years. because we are always pushing for permanency, we are pushing to try to find one of the things we do is we kind of find backups. We call it concurrent planning. So generally every case starts with reunification as the permanency plan for DCS. It's always at least the first 6 months, if not longer. But there are times where a case might be dragging on and we can ask for something called a concurrent plan to add an extra plan of guardianship or adoption or whatever, because if you have a child who's in a foster home that doesn't want to adopt them, and maybe they've been there for 2 years and they're bonded with these people, and then, you know, their parents fall off the face of the earth and we don't hear from them again. Now you have kids who are bonded with people who don't want to adopt them, and then they have to go somewhere else. And every time a child is moved, it's more trauma. So having that extra layer saying, let's keep in our back of our mind, if things fail, what would be the option, so that we would know, you know, if this foster home isn't pre-adoptive, maybe we could find another one, or maybe there's a family friend, or maybe there's a teacher or someone who might be interested in adopting this child if that reunification plan falls through, and then they can be with them during the case, be bonding with them just in case that, you know, reunification doesn't work out. These kids are more likely to have their case permanently closed. That means not coming back, because, you know, if they reunify or whatever, we want to make sure that the family is set up for success before the case is closed. And so we're that idea guy, making sure, do they have all these resources? Have they completed all of these things? Making sure that they are set up for success. And ultimately, these kids avoid juvenile and adult detention facilities because CASA gets these children to safe and permanent homes. You know, we always will have a small percentage of kids who end up in juvenile and detention facilities, but a lot of our kids, if we can catch them early enough, we can get them you know, the services they need, their parents the services they need. And it's not that their parents are bad people, it's that they maybe have grown up and the norm is domestic violence. That's normal to them, right? And so, you know, if you, I always use this joke in class, is like, my boyfriend grew up with a mom who was staying at home and she made dinner and they ate dinner at the dinner table every night. And my mom was a nurse. And so I was the youngest kid. I ate by myself watching TV at home. That's what I did. So when he moved in, he was like, let's eat dinner at the dinner table. And I'd be like, it's just us. Why don't we sit and watch TV while we eat dinner? And it was so foreign to either of us to do what the other was doing, because that's not how we were raised. Like, he ate at the dinner table every night and I sat by myself and ate on the couch. And that's kind of what is going on with these parents, is what's normal to them. They don't realize it's not normal to other people. And so they just, a lot of times, just need some somebody to tell them, you know, you deserve to be treated correctly, or, you know, this is how you show love, not, you know, the way that you thought love was. So, but anyway, I digress. If you're interested in volunteering, you don't need any special background. Anyone, as long as you're 21, you can cast background checks, and you're willing to visit your child at least once a month. We say the average that people spend on a case is 10 to 15 hours a month. Honestly, it's usually less than that. It could be 5 to 8 hours a month. It just depends if your case is, like we say, blowing up. It means it could be, you know, a child has to be removed from a situation or whatever. That might mean that we spend a little bit more time, but a lot of times it's the kids are stable and we're just waiting for parents to complete services, or maybe the kids need to get through something in therapy where, you know, they're talking about it. So a lot of it's just kind of waiting, monitoring the situation. But to, like I said, you don't need to know anything. We have training, and that's what supervisors are for. They're to be there constantly to help answer questions and guide our volunteers. So ways we could work together. Honestly, we don't necessarily need money. We need volunteers. Our mission, and the information that you learned today, if you can even spread that. If you're unable to volunteer, you have too much going on, you're volunteering with a lot of different places, if you can just tell someone about what you learned today, that helps us spread our mission, spread that CASA, what the program does. Obviously, if you're interested in volunteering, that's a bonus. I can talk about that here. Let me see if I have that. So I had a slide on training, but I took it out because we just finished our last training of the year. Our next training won't be until 2026. So there's some time. But to go through training, you have to fill out a volunteer application. We do a lot of background checks. And what's really exciting is State CASA came out with a new training that's 2/3 online and 1/3 in person. So a lot of people, their biggest barrier is our training is 35 hours generally in person, and it's a lot of time. So my training I just did was 6 weeks. We met twice a week for 3 hours each night. It's a lot of time. So with our new curriculum that we're getting, we'll only have to meet for like 12 hours in person or so. So I think it'll help get a lot more people in the door who want to do it, but maybe they have a lot going on personally. And their schedules might be a little crazy. So I'm really excited for that. I don't have plans for 2026 trainings yet, but hopefully in winter 2026, we will have another training. And then the other thing, some people are interested in helping us, but they can't volunteer. They have too much going on. Here's some things that you could potentially help. Oh, I didn't change that. It says Rotary clubs. Ignore that. I didn't change that. The last presentation I did was for a Rotary. But we have a holiday toy drive. So we collect toys for all nearly 600 of the kids we serve right now, so that each CASA can come in and pick a toy for them. So Pam has a case. Her and Dawn can come in and pick toys that, you know, she gets to know. You get to know these kids and you get to know what they like. And it's cool to be able to come in and kind of be Santa. We have a big room with all these toys. They get to come in and pick. They can wrap their gifts and give them something from that CASA. To let them know, like, we do care about you, and you know, we hope you have a good holiday season. So we just collect general toys for that. We also have a family holiday adoption. So like I mentioned, some of the cases, the kids are with family members, and we have a lot of grandparents, honestly, that take in their grandkids. And if they're already living off of Social Security or they're retired or whatever, and now you have a grandchild who is constantly growing out of their clothes and has diapers and bottle and formula, all these expensive things. It's nice to be able to provide them with some extra stuff. So our holiday adoption program is essentially for those family members or kids who are in home with a parent who is in poverty, who maybe they need a coat or they need pajamas, or, you know, we've literally given diapers. Like, that's been on the list of things that people needed, was diapers. And so we ask the families, like, what are your essentials that you need that you don't have? And what are the kids' essentials that they need that they don't have? And what are some fun things? So we connect people in the community, whether it's, you know, we have workplaces that do it. We have individual families. They'll say, hey, I'd like to adopt one kid, a sibling group, a family, X amount of kids, whatever. And so I will match them to that family, give them the wish list. There's no dollar limit you have to spend. It's just whatever you would like to. And then we end up wrapping those. And what's cool is we give them to the family to give to the kids as a gift from them. So it's not from CASA. Like, so the grandparents get to give it to the kids as their Christmas, or the parents get to give it to their kids as Christmas. So it's really cool that we get to help them with that. And then finally, in the fall, in the summer, we do a books and basics drive for school supplies and for basic hygiene items. Kids who are home during the summer, it creates a bigger strain on the purse strings when you have a child who's using electricity during the day, or more toilet paper, food, those kinds of things. So we want to make sure, one, we can help supply with school supplies. Two, that if they need any personal hygiene items, that we can at least help a little bit with that. So we have a whole room full of school supplies and personal hygiene items where the CASAs can come in and grab this stuff for their families if they need it. We want to make sure that we can help in any way possible. And that's my very long presentation. I think I was close to 30, maybe a little bit more. I'm chatty. So if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, compliments, let me know.
Amanda, thank you very much. I hope some folks have some questions. I have to say, as a CASA for 10 years, that it's a wonderful program. All of your supervisors are wonderful. They're all very helpful, and sometimes you don't get that 10 hours a month. But, so that, don't be scared off by that. Here, and I have done all of those things. Don and I have been involved in giving a child their toys. We've been involved in one time a car burned up. The child's coat was in the car. It was December. And all I did was go to CASA and went through all of the clothes and found her a nice coat that she could wear and took it over to her immediately. So she didn't have to go without a coat to go to school. It was wonderful.
Awesome. And I didn't mention, I guess, that like of the 10 and 15 hours that you spend volunteering a month, most of that's behind the scenes. Most of it's not in person. Most of it's emailing, talking to people on the phone. You see your kid in person every month, and court is every 3 to 6 months. It's not very often. Sometimes you go to court twice a year. And so a lot of it is just talking to people, reading reports, typing a couple of things up. So it's not necessarily 10 to 15 hours in person somewhere.
Right. And no, to that, I always thought it was weird because the judge or the magistrate really do count on us. Every time something is mentioned when you're in the hearing, the judge will always, the magistrate will always say, "And Casas, what do you think?" Or, "Do you have anything to say?" Or, so they do listen to us. It's not like we're just out there. Now, here are some questions. Here's a whole bunch of questions from Sue Kessam. How many fosters are there currently in St. Joe County?
Like foster homes or kids in foster care?
Kids in foster care or both. I mean, either way.
Yeah. So my numbers here on today, so this is like 2 weeks old, but so if there's 463 children that we're serving and 91 on the wait list, you add that up, and that's how many kids are in foster care in St. Joseph County right now, because we're involved in every foster care case. Now, DCS does have a program called an informal adjustment where like maybe something minor happened and the family is willing to, it's something that can be resolved in 3 to 9 months. So something very minor where maybe they need a little bit of education or whatever else. Those we're not involved in. So there's even more of those, but that's not, they're in home with their families. They're not removed. And there's not necessarily potential of them being removed. If they fail that program, they end up in our program. So
Okay.
there's over 500 right now, around 550 maybe today in St. Joe County.
Okay, how many CASAs are we short? So all have a CASA.
So there's 91 kids. I can't tell you how many families that is. We have some families that have 1 kid, some families have 6 kids. It really just depends, but we have 91 kids that don't have a CASA. So we could be short, if each CASA took 2 kids, if we had 50 CASAs, we could potentially eliminate the wait list.
What is a link I can include for more information in my post and a phone number for information?
So sjccasa.org, I can put it in the chat, is our email, and then our phone number is that. I put it in the chat.
Okay. Sue has lots of questions. These are wonderful. Are South Bend school counselors alerted as to which kids are in foster care and may need more support?
Generally, they should know, at least the school knows. The school should know if a child is in foster care. I would assume their counselor would know. We have a liaison through Penn schools where there's one person, if we have a kid in Penn schools, we reach out and we find out what school that child is in and who their teachers are and things like that. So the schools should know. It's not, so CASAs, we collect information, we don't divulge information. So if we're reaching out, we can say, "Hey, I'm the CASA for this kid," but we don't reach out to schools and say, "This kid is," that would be a DCS thing where we're, we teachers are not parties to the case. So we are not allowed to tell them anything, but we're allowed to ask questions. So DCS might be able to tell them stuff, but we are information gatherers.
And when we call schools, if we tell them that we're CASAs, we are allowed to see those children. They can't say, well, you can't see the kids here at school, but we are allowed because of our status as a court-appointed special advocate. I've been advocating for free parenting classes in South Bend. I suggested to South Bend CSC City. Yeah, and have not gained any traction. Thoughts on how that could happen to help people proactively learn to parent?
So there are a lot of organizations that offer parent cafes already. So if you go to St. Joseph County Care's website, Indiana Youth Institute, I believe, also, you could probably just Google like parent cafes. It happens a lot in the community. I don't know how to get we were actually just talking, I'm in a group where we discuss child abuse prevention, and we met on Monday, and we were talking about the biggest barrier is we have all of these like service providers of free resources for preventing child abuse. But the issue is, even if they like go to a neighborhood and they set up booths for like all these information, is people don't come out of their houses, because I think there's a stigma attached with reaching out and asking for help. And so that's the biggest issue, is people not showing up because they don't want a stigma attached to them being there for a parenting class. So sometimes parenting classes and stuff are on Zoom. We've talked about most of the places we see people ask for help is like on Facebook group chats, like St. Joseph County Mom, like there's like a supporting moms group or something, South Bend moms group, or nosy neighbors. Even sometimes people go on these Facebook groups and they are like, hey, I have a kid who needs this, or does someone need this? And so that's the biggest thing that we noticed in our group, was people wanting to digitally ask for help and not necessarily put their name or show up to do something. So that's just some food for thought.
Mm-hmm. Better World Books in Mishawaka often donates books, so that might be a resource for you.
Yes, we've actually gotten a lot of books from Half Price Books does donations too. I've been in contact with Better World Books, but right now we have a plethora of books that I need CASAs to come in and take. I have boxes of books I can't even put in our bookshelf right now. So we have a lot of that. I saw the birthday cake kits. We actually have some of those. Sunrise Rotary Granger put together some birthday kits for us. So we have those currently.
I actually was the ones that suggested that.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
I
Yeah.
suggested that to them. I'm
Yeah,
glad they did it.
Yeah, we have that. We have some here still.
Fosters have often said they aren't important since there are no professional pictures of them.
Okay.
Kish is willing to do this for the kids. Fosters have often said they aren't important since
Are the
no.
foster kids?
Sue, can you say what you're meaning there?
So some of the kids, there's like no school pictures. Like the fosters go into a home and there's pictures of like family kids and stuff, and they don't have family pictures, or um, they don't feel important because no one's taken a professional picture of them. Maybe they don't get school pictures or whatever. And so Melise Kish does works with a lot of kids. She's a professional photographer. She actually did my pictures. She said she'd be willing to help with that. And also, like, if a kid needs a nice picture to go on social media or going for a job or whatever, they just feel like it would be special. You know, it's kind of like the birthday thing. It would be special if they had a picture, kind of thing. So I just wanted to put out that she's willing to do that if you wanted to set that up or not.
Yeah, if you want to send her contact information, I can share it with our staff, and if they have any families or any kids that want that, we can definitely reach out.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well,
Does anybody else have a question? Silence.
it's good or bad. It means I did a good job or everyone fell asleep.
No, you did a good job. You touched it just like I, yeah, I just went through training all over again. And people need to know training, in the training, it was long and it was a lot of hours and it was very useful. It was a very good training. You learn about, the brain, you learn about the law, you learn about, all kinds of things that you don't know. And they bring in professionals Amanda brings in professionals from the community to cover all the issues. It's really very satisfying, I think, to be a CASA. Although I'm on furlough right now, but
All right. I've heard it's the most rewarding and the most difficult volunteer position that a lot of people have ever done.
yeah, and I remember having to go to court and testifying in a case where the children were being taken away from their parents because the parents could not take care of them. And that was really, really hard, but it was very necessary for the kids to have a chance to thrive. And they
Yeah.
wouldn't thrive in the home that they were in. It was very hard though, but
Yeah.
mostly it's pretty fun.
Yeah. I saw another question came in. Do siblings have their own CASAs? If so, do the CASAs collaborate? So any kids that are involved in the case, we put the same CASA. So generally families will have one CASA. Now it can get tricky when there's like, we have somewhere there's like multiple siblings who are living with different families and we don't realize they're connected right away. Because sometimes people have a lot of kids by different partners.
Parents,
Um,
yeah.
so that can, we've had an instance actually where there was like one child that was not with the rest because they lived with a whole different person versus the others. But actually, that case is going to end up with the same CASA. However, some cases, not all kids are in the case. So, like if it's potentially like a situation where, one kid was being physically abused, but the rest of the kids were not, um, there has to be a reason why all the kids are in the case. So like another instance is a baby born in the middle of a case. So like I had a case that was sexual abuse and a baby was born in the middle of the case, but wasn't exposed to the other people that we had removed the other kids for. The baby ended up having its own case for other reasons, but there was a 6-month period where that baby was not on my caseload because he was still with his parents and he wasn't removed yet. And then when he became removed, I ended up taking him on because I already knew the family. I knew everyone involved. And so we tried to keep them all together with the same CASA if possible.
I know Dawn and I have taken, since we're together, we often take families that are larger. They may have 6 children or 5 children or it's more complicated that way. And so we'll take a larger number.
Yeah. And we do
Kids.
take couples where couples can be trained and work on a case together. You have to really like your partner and agree with them because you got to make recommendations that are the same. So, but Pam and Don are awesome.
Well, we don't always agree, but we we pretend we do. Yeah.
Who wins those arguments? Do you win them?
Uh, yeah. Yeah. I'm the nurse, right? So I pretend like I know more, but I don't always. Anyway, any more questions from anybody? Amanda, there is the number for Blaze Kish
Yes.
and the number for CASA is up there and the email address. And
Yep.
I want to thank you, Amanda, for this hour. It has been very informative. And I think it's been very fun and you've done a great job. And I want to thank you very much. And everybody else, thank you for giving up your hour. Now you can go outside. Look at the trees turn. Okay?
Thank you.
Um, and tune in next month on the second Friday, and I can't remember who it is.
It'll be Veterans Affairs.
Oh, Veterans Affairs, that's right, because it's in Veterans Day, isn't it? It's coming on Veterans Day. Thank you very much, Kathy. Okay, y'all, I thank you very much, and Amanda, thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good afternoon and evening. Bye.